going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This workshop of the Oldsmar City Council on Tuesday, September 1st, 2020. First item on the agenda is our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be provided by our acting city attorney, who is here filling in. Patrick?
Thank you. Heavenly Father, send down your blessings on this meeting of council. Give the council members a clear sense of duty and lead them to a faithful discharge of the same. Direct them in the deliberations at this meeting so that all things may be done for the welfare of the people of the city of Oldsmar. This we pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. I should introduce Patrick Perez, who's filling in for Tom Trask. There he is. Who was unable to make this meeting because he had another normally scheduled meeting when we went ahead and booked us. Before we get into the Citizens Open Forum, I just want to make a couple of comments. One in particular, as you can see, Councilmember Norris is not here in person. She had a conversation with the city clerk and myself as to why she was unable to attend. And I will allow Councilmember Norris to go ahead and explain that briefly.
For me, Mayor?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Well, I'm currently undergoing treatment and I can't be there in person, therefore that's it.
Okay. And that's also why you're on here on the phone. It also you envision on Thursday that you will be unable to attend and that you may not have phone access.
Right. Thursday I will be unable to attend, but the 15th I will be.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. And so I'm going to ask for an opinion, a written opinion from our council, not an opinion, verbal one, just verifying that that's permissible under the current environment because it's not a COVID-19 related absentee or electronic connection. I don't want anyone to feel that the council is playing loose with the governor's order. So I'm going to ask for that in the matter of record. All right, moving right along. Citizens Open Forum. Do we have anybody from the public who wishes to speak at this time? Mr. Hughes. I can't see people with the face mask on, whether they're saying yes.
John Buse, 150 State Street East. Just wanted to give a shout out to the development community as we're still very active in pursuing land and building houses, and those things are very strong. And I know you're talking about spending a lot of money for downtown, and I just want to say that part of the development business is still very strong, both from our national builder standpoint and even local developers. So I just wanted to take a minute and say that is still important. And in fact, a couple of developers are working to pursue a letter to Mr. Braithwaite about the library parcel being in play for some multifamily project, kind of a version of the original one from 2 years ago, maybe. That I'm pretty excited about. So I just wanted to point that out, those are still active interest parties in those kind of parcels. So
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. John and I had a conversation on the phone the other day, and because during this pandemic and the investments that we're making and discussing, part of that knowledge pool is doing research. And he and I had a discussion, and he shared with me a very bullish opinion of where things are at, as have others. And so I said, why don't you share that? So it's another knowledge base for us as we go into our work. All right, moving to item number 1, town center capital improvement projects. I will, at this point, turn it over to our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor.
As you know, this year we did not have a capital budget workshop specifically because of COVID. It was kind of rolled into our budget work session, and I know today you wanted to focus on the town center as was mentioned in the agenda title, but we could have accomplished two purposes that would be helpful in the overall budget approval process. That being, because we didn't have a capital budget workshop, you never got the opportunity to express your opinion on the priorities of the projects as we listed them. And we also normally talk about out years, not this upcoming fiscal year 2021, but future years. So this would give us the opportunity to do both of those. I stand ready to proceed any way you'd like. I wasn't planning on going through the normal process of explaining what all of the priority numbers mean. 1, 2, and 3 are pretty simple. And anything you want to talk about, we'll stand ready to try and answer your questions. So I'm ready for council to tell me how you'd like to proceed.
Okay, great. And so, if it is the pleasure of the council, what I would suggest is, I know we've all reviewed it. If there's anything specific, I have things specific, of course, to the town center area. But this is also an opportunity, if there is anything else, that we can go strictly to that page. And so I will start with Council Member, or Vice Mayor Gammon.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a couple of questions about pages other than those related to the town center, and mostly just related to the department head suggestion priority versus the city manager suggested priority. If you don't.
Go right ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Mr. City Manager, if you could talk about page 8, and I don't know if this has been revised, this is page 8, the planning and redevelopment area, the Tampa Road Gateway
You know what,
feature.
let me stop you just for a minute so we're kind of organized.
Sure.
Does anybody have anything before page 8?
Oh, good point.
No, Mayor, I do not.
No. Okay, well, we're at page 8 now.
Okay,
Is it also your page 8?
it is.
Okay, good. I saw that the department had placed a 3 priority, which would be of a lesser priority according to our key in prior pages. And City Manager, you placed a number 1 as to the gateway feature and a number 2 as to the neighborhood ID features. I understand that they're somewhat in out years, 22, 23, 24, but I just had, I was curious as to your thinking on those adjustments.
Okay, with regards to the gateway feature, we
Can
all know.
you just bullet point for the citizens what those are, so they understand?
Sure. The first project mentioned was called the gateway feature. It's in the planning and redevelopment capital budget. It's spent out of general fund. The department submits a priority list, supposedly 1 being most urgent, 2 being next, 3 being least. Their opinion, once they submit it to me, I put my opinion on it, we submit it to council. Council can change or agree or disagree and put their priorities on it. So with the gateway feature, which was the first project, we've had gateway feature money in the budget for a long period of time. Conjecture here, and it doesn't matter because all the staff works for me, my conjecture is the staff realized that we've had money in there forever, so it can't be a very good priority because we've had money in there forever. We haven't done a grand welcome to Oldsmar kind of sign the way you see on the interstate leading into St. Pete. So I think it's a more important thing to get to, which is why I rated it a 1. The second project is neighborhood ID features. Kind of the same mentality. There's a lot more money to be spent there, but obviously you have to be careful about timing. But again, we've had variations of that theme in prior budgets. I think that one isn't as pressing as the gateway feature is, but I think it's more important than the council, more important than the staff did when they submitted the priority. So I ranked the 2. And I'm going to assume that unless council has either a vote or a specific desire to change one of my priorities, that if it's not addressed specifically, or if you don't tell me to make a different number for what the council wants, I will fill the council column with my priority, the number that I've got in there. So if you want to change, you got to tell me.
Right.
I noticed a couple other
Is
variations.
there any discussion on that, on those items? You know, and I'll be candid, part of what I'm looking for in this process, while we're talking about, capital improvement expenditures, is the fact that, you know, our council priority has been the development of the town center, and looking at areas and ROI, of how are there some possibilities of improving cash flow on those years when we envision incurring more outbound expenditures to help develop the downtown area. It's kind of a reprioritizing the funds. And so what I would say is, you know, I agree with the city manager's investment in the gateway feature. Granted, we're talking 2021.
Sure.
And, you know, it also could very well be, I mean, we're trying to take a conservative approach here, you know, with the potential lasting effects or not lasting effects of COVID. It could very well be that that might be an area that we leave, that we note, and we know, we have this public discussion, so there's an opportunity to feedback, that when we come next year, as we come up to it, and if things are all good, then if they're not good, then that's an area we come back to. And so that's the value, in my opinion, of this workshop, of where we're at right now today. Does everybody agree with that sentiment? So I would say we leave it as it is, knowing that potentially that might be an area that we come back to in the future, depending on how cash flows are.
And it's an easier one to push back.
Okay.
I think.
Right, so that nobody wants to make any changes to that.
I don't want any changes.
Yeah, but I appreciate the changes that the city manager made.
Very good.
Do I wanna,
Anybody got anything 9?
No.
10? 11, and leisure services, man, they wanna spend, where are they at? They wanna spend a bunch of money. Man. Hey, I do have a question under leisure services. The money that we have in the budget, allocated in the budget, for potential work on the BMX track, that wouldn't be considered a capital improvement, would it? Because it's an expense.
Well, generally it would be because of the threshold, and obviously we don't know the threshold. Second thing is, as you know, it's located in the capital improvement fund. The theoretical argument would be, depending on how we go about fixing it, it could be considered a reestablishment of something that already exists. Generally speaking though, if you're extending the life of the capital asset, it's capital. It would be like refurbishing a fire truck. That might cost you $175 to do it, you have to capitalize that, even though you may be only keeping the truck up with the wall.
Very good. Anybody have anything on page 11? Vice Mayor.
just as a sort of point of understanding, I think you've explained this before, but, I was asked why certain things might be removed from the capital improvement budget. Specifically the new roof for the Women's Club of Oldsmar Clubhouse, which is over on Exeter Street, and I just promised that there would be a quick explanation as to why some things might be removed from the capital improvement.
To be honest with you, I'm not aware of that one. Generally, the explanation is either we assume we're gonna do it before that next year, or at least encumber it, so we wouldn't have to re-budget the dollar amount. That particular one, Chip, you know anything about that? To be honest with you, I just don't remember.
We're trying to get done this
You
year.
got the speaker?
We're doing it this year?
Oh, well that.
So the answer is we're doing it this year.
Alright.
So in other words, you may see it as part of the budget figure next year because we don't get it done by the end of this year, which is likely because we're in the last month of the fiscal. But we will encumber it, so we don't need to put it in the next year's budget, in the actual original
I
document.
know
That's
a
what
lot
we're
of-
envisioning.
A lot of ladies were curious about that.
No, we're committed to it. You caught me by surprise.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't remember removing that.
I'm sorry.
I'm smart enough to know where.
There are no umbrellas needed in the women's club. Sure.
I mean, it's a very old building, but you can actually see some of the water damage on the inside now, and I know.
They hooked me with the soup day.
We try, right?
I got the ill, I had 15 suits I can say.
No,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
No,
Oh,
go right
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were done, Vice Mayor.
That's okay, go right ahead.
Well, if I understand what the city manager said about the priorities, and I had some of the same questions that Katie did about the differences. So basically, my understanding is that because we do not know what our cash flow is gonna be due to COVID revenues, you redid some of them, but we could possibly have to move or change things in the future. Did I understand that correctly?
I don't believe so. Actually, if you're referring to what I said, what I had said was, based on where we have things in the capital improvement budget in terms of what year it's scheduled for. If we have it scheduled for, 21-22 currently, and we find in 2021 that, we are facing some difficulties as a result of COVID, we still have time in the next, capital improvement budget workshop next year to move it out again. So.
Okay, and thank you. And the differences between the department priority and the city manager's priority also have been addressed as well. And so we don't have to ask about each of those. Is that correct?
Well, I think I'll let the city manager restate what he was saying earlier as it relates to, the vice mayor's question as to whether it should be ranked one way and the department head ranked it a different way. So is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, I understood what he said, and
Okay.
so what I'm saying is that further on through this work session, we don't really need to question those then.
Not unless you're not satisfied with the, city manager's answer.
Oh, no, I was completely satisfied, just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor,
Yes.
Al, for the Moccasin Creek Park line item, is that the property that's bordered by East Lake Oaks, Emerald Bay, Aventine, and the rail line?
The back part of it?
The north side of the rail
Yeah,
line?
yes.
Okay, and what particularly, I know it says design and development, so I'm sure it's probably not all ironed out as to what the intent is of that park, but is there any kind of high level ideas of what that?
That's so far down the road, I don't know that we have a whole lot of specific thoughts. You would certainly have the opportunity to help us create those, but as you can see, it's in the furthest out here.
Sure.
We've done very little with it.
Okay.
We know at some day we'd like to have something back there.
Okay.
Yeah, and for the purpose of, the folks, listening to this or watching this, our citizens, a lot of times when there is kind of a vision, that council has, that staff has, for an asset that we own in terms of improvement and making an investment, it's not an uncommon practice that we put it, I joke about it sometimes, which I really shouldn't, because I always say if you're in year 5 and 6, it means it's not happening. And that's not really true. It starts to become, the purpose of us doing this plan is so that we put something way out there that we know we'd like to see, that we think our citizens would enjoy, that would be a good investment. And we start planning to work towards that. And so now the wheels start turning years in advance. So when that time comes, assuming that each passing year we still view that as something that's important, we start planning years in advance for it, right? And so, in any event, I thought I'd mention that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good way to just get it on the radar,
Right? Yeah.
Good example is Harbor Ponds.
Good.
I remember when I first got on city council, we were talking 5-6 years out, that whole project, and then now it's coming, it's being done.
Yeah. That's a great example.
Perfect, thank you.
It's a great example. I think Mayor Beavis just planned that out just right, didn't he?
It does tend to work in both directions. We've said many times, Harbor Palms is long overdue, should have been done long ago.
Yeah.
If you were following along in the budget process for those years, it kept going the other way.
Out.
Right.
But you're right, this one in particular may have been on this sheet once before, but it was to get it on the board.
Very good. All right, any other questions on page 11? Page 12. Nope. Page 13. All right, page 14.
I actually do have a comment on this page, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
First of all, I completely appreciate that we have this budgeted, every other year now, and due to COVID, our 40,000 was pushed into 2021, and then we've got another at 2022, 2023. And, Assistant City Manager Felicia Donnelly and I had talked about this previously at our last work session, and she said that it's possible that we might, instead of doing two $40,000 art projects, we could possibly do one $80,000 art project. I don't know if that's possible, and if y'all agree to that later on down the road. But I just wanted to put it in there, that I think that's a great idea.
Okay. All right. You're not proposing a change right now, are you?
Oh, no.
All right. Very good. Put it on the radar. I got you. City Manager.
Just a reminder that the funding for the original that we've committed, I don't think we've totally spent it, but we've mostly spent it. 29,000 of that came from the fund that was raised for Art in Public Places over the years. That no longer exists. Obviously, if we can come up with a different way to replenish it, we could either accelerate this or do more with it, but right now, the original expense of the wing structure took care of it.
And isn't there also funds that come from, I guess we would call them voluntary impact fees, for lack of a better word, contribution to new building?
Well, that would be this because it isn't mandatory.
Right.
So if somebody chose to, which we've encouraged in workshop, you've asked developers, would you be willing to submit 1%, that kind of thing, because that's what's in place, but because it's not mandatory, it's kind of up to them. But
Right.
we'd like to have that re-energized, because it would give us a lot more money to put more art in public places.
Very good. Any other questions? Page
Thank you.
You're welcome. Page 15. Go right ahead.
Just one comment that, I.
Councilmember Gannon. I need to make sure I start announcing people's names. You can't see
Thank
the
you, Mayor.
speaker.
Just one comment that I agree with and appreciate the city manager's changes to the third and fourth line items, the wireless secure access and ERP system replacement, and how we've broken it up a little bit over this coming fiscal year and the following fiscal year. I think that follows our plan to further invest in our council priority to invest in connectivity. I think that's a smart one. I like that one. I would agree with the city manager's changes to those two items on page 15.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I do have a question in this. And I wasn't sure whether it would be, well, no, it would be in this budget. What do we have? I see under AV equipment replacement, we have 20,000. Is it safe to assume that 20,000 or somewhere in the budget, we're looking at what kind of equipment we have in the council room to be able to video stream and that type of stuff?
That traditionally, as you probably could guess, given the circumstances we have now, it's probably not enough. And normally, we have all we can do to keep up with stuff that we already have breaking with that amount of money. So the video streaming would be an operating expense for a service that we might buy or create if it's hardware or equipment. So I think where you're going is, have we committed enough money to making sure we can advance our capabilities? As that was contemplated, that was aimed at hardware, because it's pretty obvious we have significant needs in that particular regard because of where we're at right now. So the answer is, we can plan for obsolescence, we can't necessarily keep on top of what is gonna break. So that money we would use however we needed it. But as far as the advancement towards doing other things, that would be part of what you guys had in the operating budget, and I can't tell you, I remember exactly what we've dedicated to it, but we know it's a council priority.
Okay. Yeah, because I think we all agree that, I remember when we made the investment in this equipment, I know I sound like Mayor Beaverland right now, but I do remember the debate on it. We were still in the little shack across, I don't remember what year. But I remember it, we were all excited about the high-tech stuff we got, and of course, it was high-tech, but I will tell you, we've always had problems with the system, almost right after we got it in, and so forth, and of course, technology's changed so much since, you know, that was a couple of years ago, I'm sure, but, it warrants an investment where we should be able to stream live and everything else. I mean, I think, you know, that priority is a good return on investment. So, I mentioned it, I know we talked about it.
Confessional.
Confessional.
At the time, we were converting, hoping to advance our video production capabilities here when the refurbishment was created or finished, from what was essentially a VHS tape operation over there. We spent about $200,000 and hired a consulting engineer for that project, and several points during the way we thought we saw opportunities to save a little money to use a piece of equipment that still was working there that turned out to be a really bad idea, which started the problems we've had. Now, I'm very proud of what staff has done in making lemonade out of lemons or whatever, but we've had to your point, we've had problems with that since day one, because the entire installation was not purchased as one and as recommended, and it was so we could save 20 grand. The other issue that's as big an issue, and I apologize if there's anybody in the crowd that is in that industry, but in this space, there is one vendor in the Tampa Bay area that has the capability of doing this size of operations. And once you get dancing with one of those with government purchasing, then warranties are involved, and you have a real tough time, even if you have a bad experience, in getting rid of them to go to somebody else, because all of your warranties are kind of proprietarily covered by them. And we are still struggling with that same relationship, because they're kind of the only game in town with enough technical expertise to be able to do this size installation. Now, I'm sure there are somebody else that can do it at twice the cost. So I'm speaking practically, but this particular company who we've been dealing with forever, we're small potatoes to them. Turnaround time on things like what we have now has been a problem, but we have to kind of keep plugging with that. So this has had its challenges since day one. And yeah, the first part of it was clearly our fault. For the sake of saving 20 grand, we created equipment in there that wasn't really meant or consistent in working together with each other.
Yeah, and I didn't remember that detail. I'm sure I wasn't involved in that particular one, but. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, is that something that we could add to the council's operating budget for later? Or is that something that would need to be added to the capital improvement plan for next year?
I'll defer to the city manager.
I don't wanna just have this conversation. and
Yeah,
then
no, I agree,
evaporate,
that's the
you
reason
know?
I brought it up,
Yeah,
because, you know,
just-
this pandemic was highlighted as a weakness, we'd known it, but now we got caught kind of unprepared.
Well, remember that there's two budget hearings. Thursday is the first one, the 15th is the second one. So until the budget is approved, hopefully, in its final form, changes are allowed. So what I would suggest is let us review the operating expenses that we have, because obviously we should have something in there towards that end, because I know it's been discussed. But if we now review it and think, because of particularly current situations suggesting the problem may even be worse with regard to just keeping it running, the advancing to video streaming of the more consistently reliable source, we can make a change, we can add money to the budget.
All right, so let's look at that, and that can be a discussion for Thursday, whether or not we make.
I will have it in the
short
document
notice.
for Thursday. I'll have it prepared for your conversational agreement or whatever. It'll be in the final doc, because the agenda's already done for the tentative reading, but it'll be in the final document, and I'll bring it up so that you can see what we've committed to it, that you can tell us to increase, decrease, or leave it where it is.
Yeah, because, you know, we could on Thursday night, I know the documents are all prepared, but we could also make a motion to amend, approve based on the amendment of whatever. So I'll leave that to your discretion, how you would like us to proceed.
I'm really just gonna give you a dollar amount. I'm gonna tell you what's in there and tell you if you think that's enough. We'll make a recommendation on what we think that should be, and you guys can tell us what you want it to be, and that's what it'll be in the final document.
Very good. All right, any other discussion? Page 15. All right, moving on. Page 16. Page 17. Page 18. Public safety, you know the firefighters are always getting.
I'm sure they appreciate the city manager's 2 prioritization over 3. The training structure and the bathrooms. I'm sure they're excited about the bathrooms, they're from the training structure.
So the chief gave it a lower number, huh?
Well, I think all the department heads were encouraged to be a little bit conservative in 30 this year, so perhaps
That might have something to do with it.
yeah.
All right, 19.
Should we talk about this now or say?
No, I think we come back to 19.
I think so too.
Which is the community redevelopment.
Yeah.
All right. Item 20. Excuse me, page 20. Federal funds. That's a big number there.
But it sure is beautiful.
Any other discussion about 20? Okay, 21. Vice Mayor Gannon.
Just one quick question on, the first project listed under, aptly named projects. Country Club AC water main replacement. I just wanted to verify that the $900,000 expenditure, for which the city manager kind of upgraded the priority of it, is the $100,000 in 21-22 the planning? Design, okay, and then the 800 is the actual doing it in 22-23. Okay, understood, thank you.
All right, question?
Sure. Councilmember Knapp.
Thank you. Al, for the touch read water meter system in years 2 through 5, does that get us completely done with that, 5 years out from now, or is that, are we still have more to go?
I would say it would, if it all happened exactly like that.
Okay.
It rarely, I put this in the category, which of course is frustrating on many fronts that we can all think of right now. It's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. By the time you're done with it, it's time to do it again.
Yeah.
And we've been doing this slowly for years. So we try to put some money in the budget to get a certain amount of it done every year. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes the price doesn't allow us to do as much as we can. But by design, and that's why I harp on making a big stink out of the guys working in holes on an emergency basis, you know, a lot of their existence is putting out fires. This is almost a planned project that, you know, has to happen in a sequence. So it's not really easy to just wave a magic wand, pardon the pun, and get it all done. So yeah, it'll get done someday. Am I going to commit to you that it would be done at the end of this? I can't.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? 22?
I have just it might be a silly question, but it's something I just don't know what it is.
Go ahead.
What is a pole with a pipe rack?
Pole barn.
Pole barn with the pipe rack?
Yeah, what is that?
Well, I can give you the sandbag explanation, but I'll bet you it's pretty funny, so maybe Dan can address it specifically. I think it's a storage facility for us to keep pipe, which you've seen an example.
Yes, the city manager's correct. Nan Bennett, Public Works Director, we're asking for some kind of a roof with some racking to store pipe and valves and materials so that they don't sit out in the sun. And when we do have a water main break, we pull those off of the rack and they're good to go, and we don't have any problem with storing that equipment over time.
Where is that equipment?
Well,
currently
that's a good idea, thank you.
It's currently stored at the WRF. Distribution and Collections has a large area there that they store the materials. They've got a warehouse, but some of the bigger things like 20-foot sections of pipe don't fit. So.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, page 23. All right. Page 24. Page 25. Who's getting that hybrid SUV vehicle?
The environmental,
Absolutely.
was the question, who gets it?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Eric? Or Ashley? Eric? The environmental, I'm blanking on his last part of his job title. Administrator, or what's his job title?
Industrial treatment.
Industrial
He's
treatment.
the environmental specialist.
Right.
Environmental specialist.
Environmental specialist.
Yeah.
Being an environmental friendly.
He does the inspections for the private grease traps and all of the environmental stuff, so he needs to be.
Yeah. Are we replacing a vehicle?
Yeah, that's part of it. That's probably been pushed out. I'll bet you that was supposed to be in this year. But I bumped everything out on the vehicles. Remember, we talked about that?
Yeah.
So he's probably mad at me or they are or something. But I bumped it out one more year.
Gotcha. All right. Anything else on page 25? Page 26? Good old Harbor Ponds. Man, oh man. It does. It does. All right. So, if there's no other items of discussion on page 26, I'm gonna go back to page 19. And let's talk about the community redevelopment budget. And I'm gonna ask our city manager to go through that. Let's spend some more time on that.
Okay, that's right. All right, so the first item is a big hitter, the parking garage, which has been discussed in great detail or in great length. The thought process as we originally had budgeted it was in the year upcoming, but as we've learned, and this was mutually exclusive from anything that COVID may or may not do, it just takes a while to go through the process of getting the infrastructure in place. There's an item on the agenda for Thursday for the master plan. Obviously, we're in negotiations over the hotel. So in the it was an easy one in the sense that two things. I didn't want to present a budget that was in a vacuum $12 million higher than this year was in this environment. So I probably would have recommended we push it anyway. But practically speaking, if everything moves as we hope it to, it isn't likely we would get to be building the garage much sooner than that year anyway. And if we did, we would do a budget revision to bring the money forward. So the only issue now is the commitment to how it works in place of developing the parcels. So really, this was my doing, because if you looked at last year's budget, that 12 million, which is an estimate, was to be in this year and in 2021. So I pushed it by a year. And the priority, obviously, for the staff and for myself was the financing was probably a bond. I was getting confused on my, debt. So we would probably look to have some kind of public financing. I did get some good news yesterday, speaking of bond council, that, we're still pretty much in the air as to what exactly it's gonna be, only a garage with a residential wraparound with retail, with whatever. There's an IRS issue about the tax exemption status of the bond that gives you kind of three options. And I'm not saying it should drive what we make the garage, but I am saying that the good news that I got was, since we are in a good cash position, we have a chance of, the likelihood is that the garage is gonna end up with a mix of a taxable component and a tax exempt component. You can see why. We would be doing leasing or allowing access for money to the hotel owners. That's part of what's already been presented to you guys from the developer, so that's a private use. Obviously, the city would own the garage, and the city would have what we hope would be considered general public uses. So because of that mix, it's likely that the bond is gonna have a mix of both of them. The good news was that depending on the downstroke we can put on the bond, the validation process evaluates how much of the project on a percentage basis is considered public, is considered private. There's a reasonable chance, I'm not gonna swear to it because it's too soon, but there's a reasonable chance that obviously the taxable portion would be a more expensive borrowing. But if you can use the equity of the downstroke to offset the taxable portion, then the only debt you'll have is the tax exempt portion, even though you're using it for both. That could be a really significant cost savings. So I consider that to be the best news I've heard on that since. But too soon in the game, it's just that part makes it look better. So all I'd be looking for at this point, pending with, if I don't think anybody wants to reprioritize that, but that's what I'd be looking for, or if you chose to move the money forward or further away, or change the dollar amount. I mean, that's, our basis there was, I think, at the time we were talking about it, a 500 stall at 22,000, or 500 stall at 20,000 of space, plus the design work, or, you know, it was really kind of still up in the air because we hadn't narrowed down exactly what we want the garage to look like or to be.
Okay. Any questions? Go ahead and move on.
Next one. I did this just to see if the council was awake, especially the mayor.
I think the mayor
It was
knows.
a
I
typo.
saw
I
that.
think the mayor
I saw the priority ranking that
It was
the
a
city
typo.
manager gave to the fountain, which
Yes.
is the centerpiece, but
It's just, I was really just making sure that the council was alert. Because there were things for alerts.
yeah, you know, it's funny, that 3 looks like might be the same kind of typographical error that happens in the city manager's evaluation, I'm not sure, but.
That's what my two-free system too, isn't it?
I fully expect that to be the case. And I accept that responsibility. So in an attempt to explain myself, to me, and I have a problem with this in the operating budget with my people sometimes, and we've had this for years. In the ERP system, we require, as you know, all department heads to itemize every planned purchase in every operating expense account with what's in the system as priority numbers. It rarely works that way. It functions generally as a list. If they need 7 things, they just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I spit it back to them and go, all right, you bet, because if this is your list, because I'm interpreting this list to mean this is the thing you want the most and this is the thing you want the least. So when I cut, I'm going to assume you're at least concerned about the lowest number. In the grand scheme, so I interpret the priorities not to mean that it isn't something that we should do, but between a 1, 2, and a 3, in my opinion, the fountain's timing and ultimate need to the success of the project are less. Not that I don't think it's a good idea, are just less to me than the garage and the hotel. So we can revisit that, and I'm assuming the council is going to want to change it, but I was just expressing my opinion with more of a literal interpretation of what priorities are to me.
Right, and what I would say is, certainly no offense intended, when we approve where it's at the year, frankly, the city managers, and for that matter, the department head's priority
Irrelevant.
is irrelevant,
Absolutely
right?
true.
But, you know.
Which is why I felt okay in expressing my opinion, because I totally understand. You guys established the priority, and we executed.
Right,
But I wasn't gonna make a 1 just because of that.
gotcha.
All right, move on.
So am I changing that? Am
Mr.
I-
Mayor, I do have a quick, question about the fountain.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, I remember when you originally proposed the idea, and, you know, we all discussed it, the ballpark figure was $500,000.
Right.
Is it due to further research that we can't get what you envisioned for the $500,000, and it's gonna cost $1 million, you think?
No, I believe that the city manager and the mayor have never agreed on what it would cost. And so I'm gonna defer to the city manager so that when the time comes, I'll say I told you so.
Okay, thank you.
Alright.
And council's pleasure, what would the priority be there, since I'm assuming it's not gonna be a 3?
I'm gonna put it as a 1. I mean, I think it's very important to the project. It's the one thing that we would have here that is different from any other downtown area, in the region.
Council?
Yeah, I'll run this, thank you, city manager.
Yeah, I agree.
Sitting on his side, I just,
Yes,
Councilmember Strack.
well, as far as the whole project, where we're headed, I think that the fountain is a key issue or a key item, but I think what is more important is where we stand with the hotel, where that process is going, and then the garage, and then of course, the fountain would be third, in my opinion.
But we're not ranking it in that fashion.
I don't believe, I mean, because frankly, I would rank the hotel as 1, I would rank the garage as 1, because you can't have really a downtown
Right, those two.
without those, right? And so, you know, I don't know that you look at them and say, that you might be talking about, possibly an order in which it's done, but there's some advantages of doing infrastructure all at once. So it becomes more a question of, tactical, but okay, so you think it should be prioritized as a 3? I don't understand, we've never gone back and reprioritized, the department head's opinion and the city manager's opinion. We've left it in the budget, it's either thumbs up or thumbs down, I don't understand why you're requesting that.
well, we didn't get what happens in the capital budget workshop is we have these discussions, and if the council doesn't direct us to change the priority, then the priority stays with what the manager put it. I knew this was probably not gonna be in agreement with what you wanted, so all I'm asking is for the council. It doesn't change anything, other than if the consensus of the council is it should not be a 3, then tell me what it should be, and that's what we'll put in the council column. We do it, and we've done it every year. We just didn't have any specific conversations because the prior manager would not have presumed that he wanted a particular discussion because he figured his priority wasn't gonna be agreed to by the council. So it's a first in the sense that I knew you wouldn't agree with this, that's all.
Okay. I still don't believe that makes any sense, because quite candidly, regardless, we could make it a 10. The question is whether we're gonna leave it in 2021, 2022. So, Vice Mayor.
Just logistically speaking, to me, it seems to make more sense that, okay, the department put it as 1, the manager put it as 3, the manager can put whatever they want in their column, and then the document is published with what the council puts in the council column. It's not a matter of changing what the manager put in his column.
Yeah, I agree.
It's, the columns stay as is. As far as the actual item, I understand the importance of prioritizing infrastructure, but I do tend to agree with Councilmember Siraki's expressed opinion as far as the prioritization goes. I don't know that it's a 1, I don't know that it's necessarily a 2, as far as the black box theater, that's a 2. So it's hard to equate projects and pieces of this entire project.
I'm gonna,
Conceptually, I'm having a hard time with it.
right, and so I'm gonna, unless the council objects, with all due respect to the city manager, I'm gonna stick to what we've done traditionally. Do we want this item budgeted in 2021-22? The city manager has expressed what they feel on it, which is information that we take into account, whether we're going to leave it there or move it. I wouldn't begin to say, I have the ability to change how the city manager feels about something. I don't know that that is the intent of this. I do appreciate your willingness to say, if you guys feel like I'm wrong, you should change it. But I don't know that it's, necessary.
No, it's okay.
You know,
I have a councilmember comment. If the parking garage goes as planned in that fiscal year, just talking about the logistics of infrastructure, you see there being a big detriment to the garage and the hotel happening first, and then even if the groundwork is laid, but the actual fountain feature isn't completed, is there any kind of strategy there that would kind of help us sway one way or another of keeping it in that year, or saying it's all right if it went out another year?
go right ahead. City manager.
I consider these issues mutual, one has nothing to do with the other.
Okay.
Well, and I think that was the point that Bear's trying to make. The priority is nothing more than my department's opinion, my opinion, and your opinion on whether this is urgent, kind of urgent, or not so urgent. To your point, part of the reason that I rated it as a 3 was because I didn't necessarily think it was, not that I timed where I put the money because of that, just that in my pecking order, the things I've seen, the garage is the most important thing to the success of the project. In my opinion, and I'm only speaking for me, the hotel is certainly that important. So in that scheme of things, with the overlay that I explained about my budget process with my staff, it wasn't as important to the success of it, so I rated it a 3. Now, where the money goes, again, I'm just trying to tell you they're mutually exclusive. If the urgency of the project is in the council's opinion that it would make more sense, or you want it to be considered sooner, then you would direct me to move that money up to 2021, which is where I thought the mayor was referring to about where it had been originally. So I pushed it out more so because I think in the construction sense, it might be difficult. It might not be impossible, because if we're after the infrastructure for the entire property first, that would be part of it. So in that sense, it could precede.
I wasn't proposing it being moved up a year.
Okay.
Just so you know that. And part of that, listen, I will tell this council this, just like with anything else on this capital improvement budget, depending on where we're at, from a development standpoint, depending on where the city's at, with the external factors financially that we're all facing, we may move that back up. It's just going to be relevant to where we're at. From a planning standpoint, I don't know, unfortunately, because I feel like, COVID has been this freeze frame that we've lost time on this project. Getting a developer to commit to things that go beyond the hotel, that go beyond the other things that we need to backfill, just are not happening at the moment. So I'm okay with us moving it out a year, because quite candidly, I believe if we had nothing here but a beautiful park area, an amazing dancing fountain that people could come out with their kids, and we had food trucks out here, we'd have a parking problem. That's what I think. Because people would come to it. It'd be family fun, free entertainment. The fiscal part of that's not possible to do, because then all of the land is city-owned land and not producing any tax dollars, nor is the income from the sales of the land, and so that's not possible to do. My point is, I don't believe we'd be in a position to have that fountain without having a garage, because people would be parking down the street in people's front yards. That's problematic. And so I don't disagree with where you put it. I still think your 3 is, crazy, but that's what I was giving you a hard time.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, you may.
Only that.
City
the
manager,
point-
please.
The point you just made is kind of the way I was approaching it. Like, I think, to paraphrase what you said, the project could be successful with a garage and not a fountain, but the fountain, in order to be successful, needs the garage. The fountain might be successful, we let everybody walk around, but they do need each other. I just think the garage could be successful with a bunch of other things there, but if we have the fountain, I think we absolutely have to have the garage.
Right. So, that was good discussion, and we're saying the same thing. Does anybody have anything else they wish to add?
I would just say, based on that, the prioritization list, it kind of sounds like it too. It's dependent on the garage, but it could be shifted. If the garage and the hotel, for that matter, have any difficulty with falling in a certain timeline.
Okay, and what I'm saying is we're not gonna spend the time changing the priorities of the city manager.
Sure.
I try to do that every day when I meet with him. I will tell you, it's an absolute, fun time. We shut the door, we leave shaking hands, but I don't think that's relevant.
Okay.
To his point, it was whether or not it belonged there, whether I was hoping it would be up further, which under normal circumstances, I would hope that we were further along.
Sure. So for the purposes of the actual final capital improvement document, if we don't make a recommendation for the column council, it stays the 3.
Correct. But I think the mayor's point is it's probably irrelevant.
Irrelevant whether it's a 1 or a 2
Money
or a
is
3
what
or a
money
10,
is.
it is.
Yeah.
Okay, understood.
I really do. If anybody want to change it, we can change it. Never really seen the value in that.
Yeah.
Because it's either in the budget or it's not.
Agreed.
And I will backtrack a year ago when the council approved the concept plan. This starts to become the backfill of what does that concept plan really look like?
Sure.
Financially. So, to that extent.
Yep.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, next item.
Okay, third item was kind of a late comer to the conceptual party. I had suggested the possibility, Felicia and I had visited some local, they're literally called black box theaters. Ruth Eckert has one, there's one in downtown St. Pete. We loved it. We thought, in a timing sense, that with what Opal has done with the kids and stuff, that might be a really great thing to catch fire if we could give them a facility that was better to do a production than the gym. And nothing against the rec center, it's wonderful. They do a fabulous job with it, but it looks so energized. To be consistent with the theme of what we're trying to do over there, I think it really would be something that would attract people. Unfortunately, or obviously, it's a whopping expense. We are looking at the possibility of rolling it into the financing, all depending on what the council wants to do with it. It got bumped as well from its original conceptual place, so it's an out year, but our thought was it would be a really, really awesome thing to have that. I think Dunedin has a fine arts place of sorts, but you could use them for 1,000 things. You could use them for collaborative workspace, you could use them for meetings, they're flexible, they're universal, and the things you can do in there are just cool. So I just thought it was a good idea, but obviously we're a few years away from knowing if we can make that a reality. So for now, the 2 was just kind of we love the idea, but we don't know if it's doable with all the other things going on.
Any discussion?
I like it.
I think it would be fantastic.
I think we should leave it right where it is.
Councilmember
I
Norris.
think it's a great idea, and especially if Alan Felicia went and visited some and actually saw what they are bringing in and all the versatile, flexible uses of it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea too. I think it's something that we plan for, that hopefully it gets incorporated, because it is when you're looking at the community, hence the whole discussion on the town center, where are the voids?
that we have, that's an area that's a void. And, you know, who knows? I mean, maybe there's opportunities for public-private partnerships when we get down that road and so forth, but,
Another way to be different too.
yeah.
Have something nobody else has.
Right.
All
Mr.
right,
Mayor, I do have one question on the financing.
yes, go
I think
ahead.
that it's current revenue, debt, and other. Would other be what you just mentioned, public-private partnership?
Potentially, yes. It could be grants, it could be, you know, a variety of things.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right,
Okay, moving on to the downtown area, sign replacement and upgrade, those tend to be in the budget every year. JD, can you roll that back down, please?
sure thing.
Thank you, right there. So that's pretty much, you find that in there every single year. We pay with current revenue. We try and make upgrades to signs that you might see for roads or, so we split that up over the course of time. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Intersection traffic calming, I might need some help on where that one was now. Is that specific to somewhere that I can't remember?
These are the two intersections on State Street at Washington and Lee. There's some faux brick that it's not held up well. We'd like to put real brick in there and make it a true traffic calming, you know, pedestrian friendly feature.
And we've talked about doing that sooner as opposed to later, but then you run the risk of, with other development and stuff, you don't want to fix it and then have to fix it again. I know it's been bad for quite a while, but so that's where we're aiming there. John's got it up on the screen. Thanks, JD.
Good job.
Good job.
All right, next thing was wayfinding signage. Again, we've talked about doing that over the course of years. That's more kind of like signs to help visitors and anybody in the area to know where stuff is. We've done little ones. At one time, I think we had one at the pier, you know, steering people to the bait shop, or, you know, it's just trying to help people navigate around the city. Obviously, we have a pretty big plan. The downside to this, in my mind, is they're, like everything else, ridiculously expensive. You don't get a lot of bang for the buck. We also talked about the possibility of tying some of that into the public art. That might be a little too dicey to say specifically, but work our way into making them aesthetically pleasing and functional in a sense that would help somebody navigate our city. But those are out years, so any questions on that?
Good.
Okay, common area improvement infrastructure is interesting, partially because the 500,000 that's remaining in this year relates to the process that we just completed that council will see for the meeting on Thursday to select a consultant to do what we're going to call the master plan for next door. There is some theory, well, I'll leave it at this because we haven't negotiated the deal yet, but that money at one time when it was really placed in the budget, I was mistaking for the fountain. I was thinking, I agree with the mayor, at the time we were talking about it, I think we had 500 in mind, and since this was common area improvements, some would argue that that would be part of the common area improvement. So my fault, but I guess I overreacted by saying, okay, we need a separate line item for that. And to the mayor's point, our discussion about what it's really gonna cost will remain to who buys who lunch. Oh, sorry. So the common area improvements was simply, we probably won't, you guys hopefully will make the order Thursday. We will probably not have a deal because all you're doing is authorizing me to negotiate the deal. So we won't have a deal, a contract with the consultant who will do the master plan for next door until next fiscal. So that money is aimed at that. Okay, the actual infrastructure cost of what it would cost to prepare what's underground for whatever's going to go over it is clearly a guess, because we've heard we've worked $5 million at least partially into our financing accounts, but $3 million might even be optimistic. Who knows? in principle, what we're presenting simply is that we have a lump sum in the budget next year for the consultant that you're gonna help select. The evaluation committee did its job. We authorize a contract next year. They should be in the process of completing the master plan. Now, conventionally, most master plans would be completed before we built anything. So we are unconventional in the sense that we've got a hotel in process and we're talking about a garage. But this will at least kind of catch us up to the point where we'll know all of what council wants to see, and then we'll have everything done underground, so the rest of it hopefully will go quicker. The point simply was to get it on the record with our best guess. In fact, I would say that even the first part, I hope is not too optimistic. Let's put it that way.
And the 21, 22, the 3 million, depending on what that number ends up being, of course, right?
Right.
That would get rolled into the bond financing, wouldn't it? Just curious.
I'm sorry, that would be what?
That gets rolled into the bond financing.
I'm not gonna say it's not ultimately possible. I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Naturally, if we had to, we would do whatever we had to. But you're generally talking about assets. Now, underground stuff are assets, a little bit more tangible, that have a useful life. Okay, they have a useful life. I wouldn't recommend that, but we'll certainly look at it, especially if we have to.
Very good. All right, any other questions on that? All right, move on.
All right, St. Petersburg Drive area, we have a street lighting project in for next year, which is, I think it's St. Pete and State Street. It's St. Petersburg Drive from State Street to Tampa Road, correct? That we are contemplating buying those street lights from Tico. Dan, is there anything you want to add to that? That's essentially what it is, right?
Correct.
And I can tell you, let's see if I did it this way. Hey, we need the lighting. I have my doubts about whether buying it is really our best long-term move. This is somewhere where Bruce and I had lots of conversation. We do own some of the lights, and I think it's mostly State Street from St. Pete to here. And we may own something somewhere, but there's a real tough thing to nail between whether, it's kind of like, it's a net present value argument, kind of. If you own the structure, all you're paying for is the electricity. If you don't own the structure, they got you because they tell you what the lease of it is. But in terms of capital outlay, I don't know that I'm thrilled with the thought of spending 90 or 100,000 to own a few more streetlights. So when it comes to that, it would have to come back to council anyway, but the money's there, that's the plan, that's the way we had structured it. I think we actually had been talking about this a few years ago. We just had to get around to doing it yet. We absolutely need the lighting. There's no question about that. How we get there remains to be seen. So for this purpose, that's why it's there.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Any discussion on that?
Okay. Next one, streetscape and drainage project. Sorry. So we bumped what I think is the original part of the design money, although we have, am I confusing this? Is this complete streets?
Yes.
All right, so I have the whole thing on complete streets. We have committed, encumbered, $350,000 for design work for the entire project, although the construction part will be phased. And what you're seeing here is that the grant we got from CDBG through the Pinellas County was construction only eligible, and just for the kind of principle of the thing, the construction piece or the streetscaping piece would be the last part. And that's where we get the money. So I had been discussing this with the mayor as to whether or not that was flexible in terms of could we move that out if we had to, knowing that it's already pushed, because we really think under normal circumstances, we won't be able to get that far for another couple of years. We had originally scheduled that for 23, 24 to be finished the following year. So the real answer to the question about whether we could maneuver it either way is we don't know, and here's why. This is infuriating, but trust me, you know how annoying I am. My staff makes me look gentle. We still don't have a grant agreement, and the county is, in this particular regard, very unorganized, and all we get is, don't worry, you'll have it in plenty of time. They don't contemplate the construction for several years out, which either represents why they're not in a hurry, or why they continually kick the can down the road. Until we have a grant agreement, we don't have much to go on any framework of anything like deadlines or whatever. So I would say to that point, I mean, it's already out there pretty well. If you wanted to move it again, you certainly could, but we are committed financially to Kimley Horn for doing the design work on the entire thing. And the PO's out there, we've spent about I think it's 160 or 90 out of $340,000. So that's in play. Now we can shelve it. In other words, if you push the construction, we can shelve the plan. Now, we knew going in that if we did the design work properly and chose not to do the construction as quickly on top of that, the design work would still be okay. It's not a grant issue because the design work is not eligible for the grant, but in terms of relevance or ability for it to still be timely, if we don't do anything for a while, we're okay there. But we've committed funds to the project, we just haven't committed any construction funds. And if we finish the project, because the streetscape would be the last part, that's where we get reimbursed with the $1 million, assuming we ever get a agreement. Which, by the way, would come back to you anyway, so. But if we ever get an agreement from Pinellas County before that, you'll see it.
Okay, are there any comments on this? Because I have some comments on it. I'm just, so is it your opinion, Al, that at this point it doesn't make sense to push it anywhere? Because we don't really have the hard information in front of us. You know, and I'm looking at it as, this to me is an area that if we want to plan ahead cash flow wise, and so maybe it's just another area we highlight. That would be an area that I would go to, because I would prioritize the town center, the use of building infrastructure, specifically in the town center versus throughout the CRA as a priority over here versus beautifying the streets down St. Pete Drive. And so if it's the pleasure of the council not to take any action on it, I'll highlight that as a possible future discussion point should we need to. Does everybody agree with that?
Yep.
Agreed.
Because, you know, the problem with these grants, the grants are great. I mean, you know, it really, if you're 100% committed to doing a project, and we have this discussion kind of offline sometimes, but it's worth sharing with the public, and that is, it's $1 million grant, which was it's amazing. We're excited about it, the hard work that staff put into it, and the prep work we did with some of the research and, you know, prior to filing, the money we spent to prepare to apply, for lack of a better word, helped us get that grant. But you win $1 million grant, it's a $3 million project, right? So the city still has to spend $2 million. So those types of things happen quite frequently. And so it's just important to have that gut check on certain things, where if it's not time sensitive, and it doesn't mean that we don't lose that money, that $1 million portion of it, that's a grant, then we have the flexibility. The problem is when you get a grant that's very attractive, but the city is not financially prepared from either a pure cash flow or from a priority standpoint to say, okay, well, we have to do this by this time or we lose this grant. Douglas Road falls in that category, right? Douglas is a real priority. We've been very blessed to get some grant money there, get some appropriations from the state. But it's much more time sensitive. And so, in any event, I just mentioned that because sometimes we hear grant, it's great, but it's a $3 million project with a $1 million grant. You know, we pay you. In any. All right, moving on.
Okay, other projects, the Tampa Road overpass we've had in various stages of progress, I guess we'd call it. At one time, it was on the FDOT work plan. I don't believe it is anymore, or if it is, where's Marie? Is it in the work plan right now, do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it is, it's way out there. So remember that council approved the purchase of that property with the pond right next to the St. Pete Drive intersection. So we're prepared if it does get re-energized somehow. I would put it in the same category as what the mayor just discussed. Construction costs may not be what they were last year because of COVID, we don't know. But that's another one where likely if DOT isn't willing to make the spend, that's gonna be another case where the grant will be significantly less than the cost of the project. So it's in and out year. We don't wanna lose track of it. We wanna keep, seeing if it's out there. But, from a practicality standpoint, I don't know that it's one of my top priorities. So up to council if you wanna move the money or leave the money. It's there, we're still chasing it, but DOT would have to re-energize it with a whole lot more money in order to get it closer to being something we should go after actually doing.
Right, any comments from council on that?
Same discussions we've had year over year, right?
Yeah, I'm much more in favor of there being some kind of landmark, entranceway. I think that has similar value. And certainly, if you ask our citizens about it, who live on the other side of Tampa Road, their interest in having something like that would be for what?
Golf carts.
Golf carts. Oh, right.
Drive my golf cart over
Right,
the overpass.
which is a totally different animal than what is on the board right now. It's a different cost, it's a different process, because I thought the same thing. I'm like, well, let's just make it real wide.
No,
But,
you can't.
apparently, that's not acceptable, so. Anyhow, moving on.
Okay, pavement markings is kind of a program that we have, so we put money in alternative years to try and keep up with that around the city. I think that's not new, but we do what we can with, as we discover them or program them. And then the last one is the Parkville North Linear Park. This is way out there. This is really, I don't know how many years ago, the mayor probably knows, and maybe a couple of you guys do. We had a collaborative project with USF.
Right.
And what was the name of the program? The Institution of Land Institute people. I mean, they were the kind of the planners.
Yes.
Yeah, we had great. We had work sessions and focus groups and stuff. This came out of that, and in the grand scheme of things, if we could pull this off, I mean, this is a toughie, but I don't want to lose track of it. It's as far out as it can be, but if you could pull that off, you think of that street where it's City Hall down in the water with a median right down the chute.
It would be awesome.
That would be absolutely incredible. Is that number anywhere close to reality? I doubt it. But it's in there because we don't want to lose track of it. If that could happen, that would be absolutely amazing. But will it happen? I don't know. So the purpose of that estimate, if you will, was design money in the front year, then construction. But from what I saw in the vision, my guess would be if you guys went after that, it would probably be a lot more. Might be worth it, but it'd be a lot more.
Well, and to me, this is a great example of what we talk about, why we keep something on the radar further out. You have priorities that come before it, which I would say is having we've got the beautiful water out there, beautiful parks out there. This is really about connecting it with the downtown area. Probably a good idea to get downtown done, to go to. But I will say, what I do believe the value that came out of that work and that process that we went through with the students, the architectural students and the design students, it was a really collaborative effort, was that there's components to it that I think you will see, or that some of us brought when we were designing, our own, amateur town center that got pulled together. I think there were components of it that, were not realistic. The building of new docks, like kind of a deck over the water at Ariel's that had some restaurants and stuff out on it. I don't think it would have been real popular, but it was creativeness, so there was a lot of value in it. But to Al's point, it's certainly something that should be left because there's components of it. Yes, Councilmember Strack.
Thank you, Mayor. Al, I have a question. One of the other projects that has been removed was the Moccasin Creek Park. Do you remember that? I noticed it hasn't been on here. Do you know why that was removed?
Yeah,
Andrew asked about it, it's on another page.
Yeah, North Parks.
Page
Wasn't there?
page 11, Moccasin Creek Park is close to the bottom under
First
projects.
Under private.
Thank you.
It's out there, but.
It wouldn't be psycho, so we left it off of you.
Oh, there,
Well,
okay, yes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's way out
It's
there.
way out, yeah, okay.
And the city manager gave it a 1, so, you know, it's
Yeah.
6 years from now, it'll be there.
so it's, you can tell where his priorities are, right?
I don't even see it.
Alright. Do you have anything else, city manager? I just thought we'd end on that.
No, sir, I think that was a good place to stop.
Very good, alright. I don't know that we have much more business. You know, I think it's probably healthy that we've taken the opportunity to kind of, well, I mean, look, COVID-19 has become a focus for us and, you know, for everybody. And certainly understanding what the impact of that will be to us financially. You know, I believe that the overall, based on what experts are saying and what numbers are starting to show, that, you know, certainly not everything is defined as to what the impact will ultimately be. But there's some key things that there's value of keeping an eye on. You know, from the most fundamental thing as a city is, A, what's happening to the ad valorem tax base, right? If you ask yourself in the city, do we keep pressing on, do we pause, do we keep pressing on? And so the question to me always becomes, well, what's changing that would cause us to pause? You know, the ad valorem tax base, you know, comes of course of a mixture of commercial, retail, industrial, residential. You know, I saw this week where Zillow, for example, is projecting for Oldsmar that residential property will see a 5.8% gain over the next 12 months. That's good news, you know? On the commercial side, Tampa Bay Business Journal, who, you know, is very local, professional. You know, there was some research that they did with leading experts from the commercial real estate space, and most agree that the market will continue to be hot. It will cool maybe a little bit, but it hasn't. The unknowns are going to be those who make decisions as it relates to work from home as their leases come up or not. And most agree the biggest impact will be for new buildings, which is really what we're talking about. Won't be a lack of demand, it's more likely to be a change in design, where buildings are designed with less density, more workspace, right? So you think about the offset of that, and that was kind of the point of some of the experts. The offset of having more of your employees working from home, but now future designs are likely to include more spacing. And, you know, the handless, touchless rather, elevators and those types of things kind of coming into design work. It's also interesting, and I saw this in looking at the residential side, and it's mentioned this, and that is, right now, it's still considered a seller's market. And that definition, for those who may not be aware, that there are more buyers in the Oldsmar market than there are properties. And the significance of that is, it continues to make for a seller's market where they're getting better prices. Right now, Most sellers are getting 98.3% of their asking price. That's a good sign. That means that pressure of a glut of properties, we're not experiencing. At least we're not now. Unemployment, because Al will make this point when we have these discussions, because he's been in finance, he gets it. Unemployment's key because we could bill it, but if people can't pay it, it's a problem. When the pandemic started, Oldsmar had a 4%, just right around a 4% unemployment rate, was what our rate is. And it jumped up, as the shutdown took place, to just under 14% here in the city of Oldsmar. I don't know if y'all know these
I
numbers,
did not know
but I look at the stuff
I didn't know it was that
so
high.
that I can either agree with Al or disagree. He's the other part of that. I give him a hard time, but he gives me a hard time. It's now from 14% as of the end of June, which I believe are the last numbers, or the last numbers that I could get anyhow for Oldsmar specific. It's gone from 14 down to 9%. Right? So when you start to look at that, you go, okay, that's still 9%. Right? And there are some experts who believe that as the relief money, the extra 600 that was in unemployment, as that goes away, they believe that the number will probably accelerate coming down. Because I've heard from some of our employers, especially in the hospitality side, that they had employees and they tried to call back and they said, listen, I'm making more on unemployment than coming back. And in fairness to those individuals, those restaurants that opened back up, they weren't running full steam where they were even going to make back to what they made to begin with, right? So it's crazy. But when you start to look at those different moving parts, I think things overall are trending in the right direction. And by the time we get to sinking a shovel, hopefully, because right now, as the unemployment, which to me is the biggest concern as mayor, regardless of this project or not, there's a 5-point differential from where we are at normally, right? So you kind of keep that in focus, but it's trending in the right way. So I think it's important that we keep our eyes on those numbers and know that, okay, the signs are still good, we should still continue on. And so anyhow.
I just want to make one comment there, thank you. The traffic on Tampa Road has really increased, so that is a good sign. I really feel that the economy is starting to pick up. And I just, because I live right there and I see the traffic every day, but it has really increased, even on the way here, it really has increased. So I think it's a positive, we're moving forward, and I hope you have employment as well.
Yeah, it continues to go down. Good point. Vice Mayor.
More of a question for you, Mayor, thank you. It was my intention to ask our city manager either today at the workshop or at Thursday's council meeting for an update as to the negotiations with Simone. Since we're talking about the downtown area, I didn't know if that was something appropriate that you would like to discuss today, or if it's something that you'd rather save for the end of the meeting on Thursday for council comments and questions.
I'm not opposed to it being discussed right now. What I would say is it might make sense to wait for the council meeting, because it's my hopes that the people that we're in negotiation with on downtown hear that discussion.
Yeah,
I think there's some value to that.
okay. That's a
I
great
agree,
point.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That was gonna be my follow-up question too, same thing.
Yeah.
When, timing wise for that?
Well, it's day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if y'all reached out for any kind of briefing one-on-one.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Both our city attorney and our city manager.
Yeah.
Yep, also, I did also.
All right, Councilmember Norris, do you have anything else?
Her phone call was cut off, Mayor.
Okay, very good. All right, is there any other items?
Just the cover.
The covered. Go right
Number
ahead.
of the capital improvement budget has been changed.
Got it. Duly noted. You have it covered. All right, we're not actually approving, we approve it officially, so it'll be corrected. If everybody will hand me their copy, I'll just go ahead and manually do it, save us a little. No. The vice mayor wants to make sure the vice mayor is
Are you
covered.
gonna change the 3 to a 1 in your handwritten copy as well?
No, I'm right, I am. All right.
Already done.
Already done, already done. Hey, if it's in the budget, you can make it a 10, it doesn't matter to me. You know, I mean, that's never made sense to me anyhow, but
You got it.
it'll get it done, we'll get it done. All right, y'all, well, listen, I appreciate you getting together, you had some good questions, and, I feel good about where we're at in this difficult times. I will tell you that there are also people who are looking at the pandemic and saying, wow, what an opportunity.
I agree.
And I think we're much more in that mode, but nevertheless, we'll keep an eye on all the economic indicators and keep pushing on. And regardless of any distractions, this council continues to do the city's business, period. And so I appreciate all of you for that. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. It's not required, but we're adjourned.
Good job, team.